Hello everyone and welcome back to Retro Legends. In the early 90s, the one-on-one fighting game was everywhere. Arcades were dominated by continuous challenges, iconic characters, and increasingly frequent sequels. But behind this apparent vitality, the genre was beginning to show signs of fatigue. The mechanics were consolidated, the structures increasingly similar, and standing out became harder every year. It was in this context that, in 1994, the King of Fighters 94 burst onto the scene. Not just as another new fighting game, but as a direct answer to an oversaturated market. A conceptual breakthrough even before any technical one. A game that didn't try to outdo others in complexity, but instead changed the fundamental rules of competition. This video tells how and why KOF 94 was born, what made it different, what risks SNK ran, and why today it is remembered as one of the most important titles in the history of fighting games. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more journeys into the world of retro gaming. Let's begin. In the early 90s, SNK held an atypical position in the industry. It wasn't a generalist producer, nor a direct competitor in the mass home market. Its strategy revolved around the Neo Geo as a unique platform, designed to minimize the gap between arcades and homes. This choice brought an obvious technical advantage, but also structural rigidity. High costs, a limited audience, and reduced margins for error. In this model, every title becomes a long-term investment. SNK games not only have to sell at launch, but remain competitive in arcades for months, often years. This demands a design focused on longevity, deep gameplay systems, recognizable characters, and a balance solid enough to withstand intensive use. A failure cannot be absorbed by sheer numbers, because there isn't a mass market ready to compensate for it. The fighting game genre is central because it's what best showcases the Neo Geo, leveraging its hardware power, ensuring continuous rotation in arcades, and building loyalty. But it's also the most unstable ground because it's dominated by sky-high expectations and aggressive competition. Every new title is directly compared with its predecessors without mercy. Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting gave SNK characters, styles, and a recognizable visual language. But they also highlighted a limitation. Continuing to expand separate series risked fragmenting the brand's identity. In a closed ecosystem like the Neo Geo, this dispersion became a strategic problem. This led to the need for a project that wouldn't just add another line, but would recompose all of them. Not a sequel, but a convergence. A title capable of capitalizing on the existing legacy, reducing risk, and maximizing impact. The King of Fighters was born precisely from this need, to transform a catalog into a system and a sum of successes into a recognizable annual event, central to SNK's identity. The turning point for the King of Fighters 94 came from a structural rethinking of the very concept of combat. SNK didn't just ask how to improve one-on-one combat, but questioned the genre's basic unit, the single character. The question wasn't aesthetic or narrative, but functional. How to increase depth, longevity, and variety without multiplying complex systems. The answer is team battle. 3 characters per side, facing each other in sequence, with no possibility of rotation during the round. This choice eliminates the continuous improvisation typical of tag systems, and introduces a logic of progressive attrition. Every mistake has consequences that carry over into the next match. Victory is no longer tied to a single exploit, but to the ability to manage a series of consecutive clashes. The strategic focus shifts. It's not just about winning, but how you win. Expending too much energy against the first opponent can jeopardize the entire match. A character can be sacrificed to weaken the enemy team, or preserved to turn the final situation around. The team becomes a resource, not just an aesthetic choice. The choice of characters also takes on a new significance. It's not enough to just pick the strongest ones. You need a balance of styles, coverage for weaknesses, and a carefully considered entry order. Each team tells a precise tactical story, discernible even before the first punch is thrown. In this sense, the King of Fighters 94 doesn't just introduce an alternative mechanic. It introduces a different competitive structure, closer to a marathon than a sprint. A philosophy that rewards planning, endurance, and a holistic vision, and that redefines the very concept of a competitive fighting game. One of the truly innovative elements of the King of Fighters 94 is the way it constructs its narrative identity without explicitly telling it. There are no lengthy sequences, elaborate dialogues, or explanatory cutscenes. The story exists through aggregation, through contiguity, through recognition. It's an implicit narrative, entrusted to the team composition and the player's memory. For the first time, SNK brings together characters from universes that had, until then, remained strictly separate. Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, Ikari Warriors are not merged or rewritten. They are simply made to coexist. This choice avoids narrative dissonance and transforms the tournament into a kind of neutral ground, a credible convergence point for different worlds, unified not by plot, but by competition. The crossover doesn't work as a superficial gimmick. Each team is built with a precise logic, shared nationality, compatible fighting style, pre-existing relationships, or thematic affinities. Nothing is random. The characters are not assembled to maximize the nostalgia effect, but to strengthen the internal consistency of the roster. This approach changes the relationship between the player and character selection. It's no longer just about choosing who's strongest or who you like best, but what kind of team you want to represent. Each team communicates an identity: military discipline, traditional martial arts, urban aggression, pure technique. The choice almost becomes ideological. In this way, KOF 94 manages to do something rare for its time. It builds a shared universe without overcomplicating it. It transforms character selection into a narrative and cultural act, not just a mechanical one. It's a celebration of SNK's legacy that comes through gameplay, not through explanation. From a gameplay perspective, the King of Fighters 94 adopts a deliberately essential approach. It doesn't try to impress with layered systems or flashy technical solutions. On the contrary, SNK builds a solid, readable framework where every element is designed to function reliably within a new competitive context, that of teams. The pace marks a clean break from previous Fatal Fury titles. Characters respond more immediately, movements are less rigid, and jump management finally becomes predictable and controllable. This makes combat less about individual exchanges and more about positioning, constant pressure, and the ability to anticipate your opponent rather than react late. The hit system structure is simple, yet coherent. Hitboxes are more stable, attacks have clear roles, and priorities are easy to read. There's no room for chaotic improvisation. The game demands discipline, knowledge of distances, and understanding of timing. It's a fighting game that rewards the right decision, not the most complex sequence. This philosophy is also reflected in the character design. Each character fulfills a precise function within the team: space control, offensive pressure, defense, and punishment. There are no neutral characters. Every choice carries a tactical weight that extends beyond the individual match and influences the management of the entire team. The depth of KOF 94, well, it's not immediately obvious, because it's not explicitly coded into its systems. It will emerge over time as players begin to explore the metagame, to study the interactions between characters, and to understand how its apparent simplicity was actually an extremely robust foundation. It's a game that doesn't demand to be mastered immediately, but rather understood gradually. From a visual standpoint, the King of Fighters 94 continues with SNK's graphic language, but makes it more mature and functional. There's no desire to impress with excessive effects or flashy solutions. The goal is clarity. The sprites are designed to be immediately readable in motion, with sharp silhouettes and animations that prioritize communicating the action over fine detail for its own sake. The expressiveness of the characters is one of the key elements. Each fighter conveys weight, speed, and intent through clean poses and transitions. There are no superfluous animations. Every frame has a precise function, whether it's to anticipate an attack, signal a window of vulnerability, or make a fighting style recognizable. This makes the game understandable even at high speeds, a fundamental quality in a competitive title. The backgrounds follow the same philosophy. They are rich in elements but never chaotic. They don't try to overpower the action, but rather to contextualize it. Each scenario suggests a real or plausible location, linked to the identity of the team it represents. They are not just decorative backdrops, but spaces that reinforce the idea of a global itinerant tournament, consistent in its staging. The choice to intentionally avoid gratuitous spectacle is deliberate. SNK doesn't want to distract the player, but rather to guide them. The result is an aesthetic that doesn't age quickly, because it's not tied to fleeting visual trends. KOF 94 builds a credible world precisely because of its simplicity. A recognizable, solid universe where the graphics work quietly to support the gameplay, not to overshadow it. The soundtrack of KOF 94 is another key element. It doesn't strive for memorable melodies at all costs, but rather builds atmosphere. Each theme accompanies the fight without overpowering it, maintaining tension and rhythm. The sound effects are sharp, impactful, clear. Every hit has a perceptible weight. In this case, too, SNK chooses functionality over spectacle. The development of the King of Fighters 94 was marked by a phase of controlled experimentation, which, well, is more complex than it might seem in hindsight. Bringing together characters from different universes isn't just a creative choice, but also a real technical and design challenge. Each SNK series had different rhythms, power scales, and fighting philosophies. Merging them without distorting their essence required continuous compromises. Balancing is truly the central issue. Characters born for one-on-one games now had to function in an elimination system, where the overall team's resilience mattered as much as the effectiveness of the individual fighter. SNK was forced to revise parameters, speed, damage, and attack priorities to prevent certain combinations from being overwhelming. There were no direct precedents. Much of the work was based on trial and error, observation, and subsequent corrections. Narrative coherence is also a challenge. The crossover cannot appear arbitrary. The teams must have an internal logic, a recognizable identity that justifies their existence within the tournament. This imposes precise choices on who to include and who to leave out, sometimes sacrificing popular characters to maintain balance and readability. Internal testing is intense but limited. SNK is aware that no lab can replicate the real behavior of arcades. Expert players, continuous matches, spontaneously emerging strategies. It's there that KOF 94 is truly put to the test. Audience reactions, unexpected character usage, and the game's ability to withstand prolonged sessions become the true indicators of success. When the game hit the arcades, It proved successful not because it was perfectly polished, but because it was solid, clear, and stimulating. Its imperfections didn't undermine the experience. In fact, they helped create a vibrant competitive space where experimentation and adaptation became an integral part of the game. Upon its launch, the King of Fighters 94 perfectly captured the attention of arcade goers. In Japan, in particular, the title quickly spread because it offered something recognizable but new. Familiar characters integrated into a different competitive structure, one that was longer and more strategic. Matches attracted spectators, not just players. The team system made each encounter a small narrative, filled with comebacks, resource management, and choices that influenced the next match. In arcades, this translates to a high retention rate in front of the cabinet. Matches last longer, encourage rematches, and foster direct competition. SNK achieves exactly what it's looking for: a game capable of sustaining interest over time, not an ephemeral success tied to novelty. On the home front, Neo Geo AES and CD conversions didn't aim for massive sales, but for fidelity. The high price wasn't an obstacle for the target audience, who saw KOF 94 as the home equivalent of the arcade experience, without any obvious compromises. It wasn't a mass market release, but it was a stable one, built on a base of enthusiasts willing to invest. The most significant effect, however, is cultural. The King of Fighters 94 introduces the concept of annual continuity in a genre that, until then, had relied on irregular sequels and sporadic revisions. The tournament isn't just a narrative event, it's a real, eagerly anticipated appointment. The audience begins to wonder not if, but how the next chapter will unfold. This gave birth to a new perception of the fighting game, no longer just a product, but a competitive season, a cycle that renews itself, updates itself, and is debated. It's the beginning of a ritual that transforms the King of Fighters from a single success into a tradition, destined to define SNK's identity for years to come. Reread with today's eyes. The King of Fighters 94 inevitably shows its rough edges. The balancing is still unstable, some choices are rigid, and the team system is not utilized to its full potential. But to reduce the game to what it lacks means misunderstanding its role. KOF 94 wasn't born to be definitive, it was born to be foundational. This is the key point. The game establishes a language. It introduces a structure, a rhythm, an idea of competition that SNK had never codified so clearly before. The team tournament, the identity of the teams, the coexistence of different narrative universes are not yet fully refined, but they are already recognizable. It's here that SNK realizes what the King of Fighters can become. From a design perspective, KOF 94 functions like a laboratory. Every solution adopted is observed, measured, discussed. What works in arcades? What creates imbalances? What makes players come back? The answers to these questions don't remain theoretical. They become the foundation upon which subsequent chapters will be built, year after year. In this sense, KOF 94 isn't just an isolated episode, but a point of origin. It's the moment SNK stopped thinking in terms of individual series and started thinking in terms of an ecosystem. Everything that came after, the increased technical complexity, the refinement of the team system, the competitive evolution, is already implicit here, even if not yet fully expressed. Without KOF 94, the saga would lack direction. With KOF 94, SNK didn't just create a new game, but a trajectory. And it's this awareness, more than formal perfection, that makes it an indispensable chapter. To say that the King of Fighters 94 is just a great game is to diminish its true scope. In reality, it was a conscious design choice, a clear stance taken at a historical moment when the fighting game genre risked becoming repetitive. SNK didn't try to compete on the grounds of pure spectacle or technical complexity for its own sake. Instead, it chose to redefine the genre's boundaries, intervening in how the game was conceived, perceived, and experienced over time. KOF 94's innovation isn't quantitative, it's qualitative. It doesn't just add more moves, more effects, or more isolated characters. It introduces a structure that changes how the player relates to combat. The team becomes a strategic unit, the tournament a coherent context, the choice of characters an act of identity, not just functionality. It's a shift in perspective that moves the focus from the single match to competition as a system. This vision has profound consequences. It transforms the fighting game from an episodic experience into a recurring ritual, from an impromptu challenge to a recognizable appointment. KOF 94 doesn't just ask to be played, but to be followed, studied, awaited. This is where the idea of an annual series with a strong identity is born, something that goes beyond the single title and builds continuity. For this reason, the game is not simply remembered as the first chapter. It is remembered as the point where SNK declared what it wanted to be. Not a response to competitors, but an alternative. Not an exercise in technical prowess, but a demonstration of vision. And it is precisely this clarity of intent that allows the King of Fighters 94 to traverse time, not as a relic, but as the conscious origin of an entire design philosophy. And with that, our journey into the past comes to an end. How many of these fun facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more journeys into the world of retro gaming. Thank you for watching Retro Legends, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends.